And while Dr. Peters was so graciously giving us his knowledge this morning, he mentioned the 4 R's of the medicine wheel, and he looked at me. And so, out of some teachings that I acquired from Dr. Peters, I developed a management plan for natural resources surrounding the 4 R's of the medicine wheel. And so that's what I'll be speaking about today. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Lower Muskogee Creek Tribe of Florida for joining us today, where I'm registered. Thank you for coming in and air streaming with us. I'm very honored that you have decided to do that today. Also, I want to thank my family for being in and out of this today. I received a degree, an honors degree in science from Oregon State University in 2008, and it was in arid land ecology, research and analysis, and traditional ecological knowledge. I also have a degree in natural resources and in Native American studies. I'm currently a graduate student doing a combined master's PhD program in large landscape ecology, and I'm studying elk. So before I continue on my journey here with the medicine wheel, I also want to talk about a little bit about elk. I saw my first wolf in Oregon over by my elk fields. It was a male. And he came up on the road in front of me, so I figured I was lunch because I said, well, it's a good day to go, I guess. And he kind of grinned at me and ran up the hill. And not long after that, the rangers also saw him running across the fields at Starkey Experimental Station. And so they are there. We also did some howling. And the first night we got coyotes, and the second night, far in the distance, we had a wolf. So they are coming to Oregon. They're here. The elk, one of our concerns about the elk in Oregon is what their innate response is going to be to this keystone species. However, we do not currently have a process in place to do a predation study in regard to that. I'm studying elk and their movements under lunar phases, and it does not include a predation study. Currently in Oregon, most predation takes place on elk from cougar and bear on the calves. And I think the last number I heard was 73% take. So with that, thank you for coming. Once, a few years back, I was in a Native American Science and Technology class with Dr. Peters. And let me see if I can clip this on me. And he so graciously enabled, not really enabled, but taught us about a teaching. I'm not exactly sure who the original person was who taught this teaching, but it talked about the 4 R's of the medicine wheel. So I'm briefly going to go over that today with you. It's important that we think about those R's. And after learning this from Dr. Peters and working through my process as an undergrad here at OSU, now becoming a graduate student, and I'm teaching classes here at the university, we developed a model for natural resource management based on the medicine wheel. It's a good process, and I teach it in my classes because it goes in a circle. It's continuously moving around in a circle. There's no beginning and no end as to how you can utilize this tool. If you have to go counterclockwise, it's all right, because it doesn't mean that through this management process you're going backwards. It means that you are reevaluating and continuing to look at those teachings that were presented to me so long ago. The other interesting thing about this management tool is that medicine wheels are in different shapes and forms for so many different people. Some folks have red, yellow, black, and white. We have white, yellow, blue, and black for our medicine wheel colors. And they come either in the usual shape, which people recognize in our ever-growing world of pan-Indian symbolism, to also being on the convex like this. My daughter had her quilled wheel in her car, and I thank her for letting me borrow it today. So the first R, the medicine wheel in this relational model, is respect. You have to have respect. The first person you have to have respect for is yourself. If you don't have respect for yourself, how can you help anyone else? You have to look within yourself and think about that respect that you have. I know we've heard a lot about reciprocity today, but some of these steps are the steps toward reciprocity. And it's very important that we, as we travel our journey, no matter what we're doing, that we think about our balance and our place on this earth. Balance is a very important factor that we have to think about. Respect is the beginning. Balance plays into first looking at yourself, your family, your community, your government, your local community, your city, your town, and it can cascade out from there like a raindrop. It emits ripples, and you become an impact. When you impact the earth as a raindrop hitting a pond, per se, your ripples generate out. You're not the only person. I'm not getting across. I'm sorry, can you hear me better? Okay. You're not the only person that when you send out ripples that make that impact. Many people around you make that same impact. When those ripples cross boundaries with one another, then you are affecting each other. If everyone whose ripples falls to earth and where you have to communicate and those ripples come together, those people are not thinking about respect. Respect for themselves, respect for their neighbor, respect for their families and their communities, for the seen and the unseen. We cannot forget those. The seen and the unseen are very important. If we forget that respect and our ripples collide with another's ripples, how are we going to be able to work together? We have to be open-minded and accepting. We have to come up with a way of collaboration. Our ways of collaboration are the second R of the medicine wheel. That's right thought. Once you've looked inside yourself and thought about your balance, then you've got to look at your right thoughts. These right thoughts are very important, especially when you're thinking about natural resource management, like prescribed fire regime, or riparian restoration, landscape reforestation, grassland repair. It's all relative into the same process. You're working with groups of people who have different worldviews, and you have to be able to have an open way of collaboration with them. Right thought is very, very important. You never want to be dishonest. Your thought processes have to be open and nurturing and caring for those communities with which you are interacting. It is very, very important. In governmental agencies, some of us will work for them, some of us do now. With universities, you have to have that memorandum of understanding, that confidence of trust and ability when you're working with several groups of people in these kinds of situations. And we all know how sticky some of these situations can be. We were just talking about the wolf situation. Even watershed, water rights. You're going to be hearing about Klamath today. You're going to be hearing about who the oldest water rights holders are in Oregon. There's a lot that goes with it. Natural resource and self-determination are one of the things that are happening too, where people are able to have a say with government agencies about what happens on their tribal reserves. So right thought is very, very important, especially when you are in a position of authority, because you have to be honorable. You have to be humble in some aspects. But most of all, you have to be open-minded, and you have to think about how you're presenting yourself. Right thought can also embody the way you present yourself, which slides into the deed. The third R, the right deed. Your demeanor can totally turn off a room. If your demeanor is not good, your tone of voice, the way you speak, the pitch of your voice is especially important. Sometimes you have to be the calming agent amongst a bunch of controversy. I know earlier on, when I was still in the Indian education programs in California, and I was working with Elder Elaine Dempsey on some of the NAGPRA issues with early California NAGPRA collaboration, there was a lot of controversy. Elaine's mannerisms and deeds and thoughts were so open and caring. She taught me a lot, as does the lessons that I hear from some of my elders here at the university, from my family, from my grandmother, from my mother and father, even from my granddaughter. You learn. When working with different groups of people in different mindsets, in different types of jobs and communities and organizations, you have to be able to think about your thoughts when you go into the third R, which is right deed. When you're negotiating at a table with a bunch of people, a bunch of community folks, you have to think about this deed. Did everyone get a chance to express their voice? One of the biggest processes that we go through when we're working in government is, gee, did I give everybody the right to say and express how they feel about this subject? It's very important. Sometimes that can be the maker or the breaker if someone does not feel that they were heard. Also in that right thought and right deed process, the second and third R's of the medicine wheel, is your opportunity to gather and collect historical information about the situation that you are having at hand. It's very important that you listen. You will have people from all ages, all walks of life, talking to you about that particular piece of land, that particular law, that particular process, that particular riparian zone, that particular watershed. They're going to have information that's very, very important to you. They're going to need that voice. And the patience that comes along with the right deed is very, very important. Openness and understanding, kindness, generosity, and knowing that when you are speaking with people, that they know everything is on the table. Never hold a card. It causes mistrust. The most important thing that you can do when negotiating with many, many people about very sensitive subjects, and in our cases with natural resource change, most of the subjects are sensitive. Everyone has a buy-in. Everyone is concerned. Everyone is worried about the outcome. So trust is a giant factor. Also in right deed, when you get all of the cards on the table with everyone, you understand where everyone is sitting, everyone's opinions, and you have been told by a higher voice that this is how this process is going to have to go. It is your right deed to go back to your higher authority and discuss the issues with them. Make them aware. This isn't exactly easy and laid in stone, and the process isn't as working as the way we thought it was going to. We have this information we didn't have before. We have to reevaluate maybe how this plan needs to be drawn through. Never be afraid to go back and question authority. Even if it's your boss, you need to go back. You need to reevaluate and bring everything back to the table. It might lengthen the process, but what it does is it builds that memorandum of an understanding, that collaboration, that respect. Out of that respect and in community, working with people, comes your fourth R, which is what we have heard most about today, reciprocity. Sometimes you cannot reach reciprocity without going through these other processes. It's very, very important. Reciprocity is one of those very, very important things to be able to understand as well. Most of us in this universe are givers, and we're not used to having things gifted back to us. We're not used to reciprocity. It's important that you learn to give and take. It's important. The nice thing about using these 4 R's in a natural resource management program is that as you work your way around this system, you are always going in a circle. It never ends. The respect has to stay there. The right thought has to stay there. The right deed is something that you have to keep foremost in your mind, and your reciprocity, the give and take. The give and take is very, very important. Now that we're starting to look at traditional environmental knowledge, melting it and bringing the gap, actually gapping the giant crevice between Western science and traditional knowledge, we're bringing it together. This time is the time when we need to think about how we're putting ourselves forward, how we're acting with each other, how we're considering each other's worldview, how we are negotiating these things that lay before us on the table. There's nothing wrong with other people's worldview. Like I told my classes are taught in an oral tradition. They're taught in another worldview, and that's okay. It's okay to have that. Not everyone has the same view. So as we work our way around the medicine wheel process, we get rid of the sharp edges of a management triangle. That kind of has its edges. That kind of has its stop and go. Okay, we've gone from 1 to 2. Now we're going to go from 2 to 3. Now we're going to go to 3 to 4. It's almost like a waltz. As to where with the management tool, with the medicine wheel, it's round, like so many things in the world. Remember and visualize yourself when you're falling to earth as that raindrop and you're making those ripples, how many people you interact with during the day. Remember to be respectful, humble, and sometimes you have to be stern. Sometimes you have no choice. But do it in a way that's respectful. Don't hold any information off of the table in front of the people you are negotiating with. They will respect you for it, even when times are tough. they will still respect you, even if they don't have the outcome that they wish they could have. At least you will have that collaboration. They will want to work with you again. It's very important.